Welcome to the Unknown Chronicles, where reality frays at the edges, and the shadows whisper truths not meant for mortal ears. I am your host, Thorn Blood Rose, your guide through the veiled corridors of fear, where the ordinary becomes unrecognizable, and the familiar turns hostile. Together we'll descend into the dark spaces between moments, where every silence holds a secret, and every flicker of light is a promise quickly broken. And these are the stories not just to chill your blood, but to make you question what lies just beyond the edge of perception. Tonight's descent comes from laps of St. Louis, and this is the Peephole. Let's step into the darkness.
I've spent years in my small, dimly lit apartment, the walls closing in around me. The outside world has always felt like a prison, one I couldn't bear to step into. The idea of leaving my apartment suffocates me, sends my heart racing. My agoraphobia has ruled my life for as long as I can remember, but at least I have my peephole, the one window I allow myself to the outside world. At first, I just watched my neighbours. I never spoke to them, never interacted, but I could observe them from the safety of my apartment. The man across the hall always leaves early in the morning, his briefcase in hand. The elderly woman next door goes to the supermarket at the same time every day. It was comforting, knowing there were people out there, that life continued beyond my door. But lately, something has changed. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I noticed shadows flickering outside my door. I thought it was the lights malfunctioning at first, but the shadows didn't behave like they should. They moved, no, they slithered in unnatural ways. My pulse quickened as I leaned closer to the peephole, my breath shallow in my chest. A figure emerged from the darkness of the hallway, crawling along the walls. Its limbs twisted and contorted like something out of a nightmare, its body long and serpentine. I staggered backward, my heart thudding in my throat. That thing, whatever it was, wasn't human. My head screamed at me to turn away, but I couldn't look away. Then I heard a heavy thud hitting the floor and a thick slab of meat hitting the butcher's block. It sent a cold shiver down my spine. I knew instantly what is. I quickly pressed my face to the peephole again, my hands trembling. One of my neighbours, a young woman I'd seen around, was being dragged away by the creatures. Her body was limp, her face frozen in terror. Her quiet screams etched on her face. I couldn't move, couldn't do anything. It was as though my body had become frozen in place. My mind screamed at me to do something, but I was paralysed by fear. And then, as quickly as the woman had been taken, shadows appeared in front of my door. A pair of eyes, pale hollow, appeared right in front of the peephole. I froze. The creature was looking directly at me. It knew I was there. It knew I was watching. I felt its gaze, cold and unblinking, as though it could see straight through the door. In that moment, I realized the truth. The creatures weren't just lurking in the building. They were hunting, searching for a way in. And it was only a matter of time before they found me. That night was the first time I slept with every light in my apartment on. But sleep didn't come easy. The siege. Every night after that, the creatures returned. It started with the sounds. A faint scratching at my door, so light at first, I convinced myself I was imagining it. Then came the whispering. It wasn't a voice, not really. It was the sound of shifting shadows, of something moving through the dark just beyond my sight. They were testing my door, brushing against it, pressing their weight against the frame. The peephole became my obsession. I checked it constantly, peering out into the hallway, waiting, dreading. One night, I saw something new. A blackened hand with long fingers with too many joints slid through the narrow gap beneath my door. My stomach lurched as I stumbled backward. The fingers curled, testing the space, reaching for something. Me. Oh God, it was reaching for me. I grabbed the closest thing I could find, my desk lamp, and yanked the cord free from the wall. Heart pounding, I shoved it down near the door and turned it on. The effect was immediate. The fingers jerked back violently, a low, guttural hiss seeping through the wood of my door. They hated the light. That became my only weapon. I bought more lamps. I dragged them all to the door, making sure no part of it was left in shadow. It worked until they adapted. The next night, the bulb in my hallway light flickered and died. I ran to my peephole and saw them clustered just beyond the reach of my remaining lights, their forms writhing like smoke made solid. They had figured out how to kill the bulbs. I barricaded myself in, surrounding myself with every possible light source. I kept my laptop open and my phone flashlight aimed at the door. The creatures never stopped trying. They slid along the edges of my apartment, pressing against the walls. I could hear them breathing, if you could call that sound breathing. A wet, rasping exhale, slow and deliberate. One night, my power went out completely. I barely had time to grab my emergency flashlight before the scratching began, the whispers growing into something closer to a low, wet chuckle. The sound of bodies pressing against my door, harder this time. They knew I was trapped. I backed into a corner, gripping the flashlight like a lifeline, the beam shaking in my trembling hands. I stayed awake all night, listening to them. By dawn, they were gone, but I knew they'd be back. I couldn't stay here. If I stayed, I was dead. For the first time in years, I opened my door. My hands shook violently. My legs felt like lead, but I stepped out. The hallway was dead silent. The overhead lights flickered weakly, but the darkness at the far end of the hall felt alive, pulsing, waiting. I knew they were there, watching, but I couldn't let them win. I forced myself forward, toward the stairwell. My heart pounded with every step, but I kept moving. And then I saw her, the woman who had been taken. She was slumped against the wall near the exit, her face pale, her body trembling. She was still alive. I rushed to her, my fear momentarily forgotten. She stirred as I touched her arm, her eyes fluttering open. "We have to go," I whispered. "Now." I hoisted her up, guiding her toward the stairwell, the last remaining lights in the hallway flickering as we moved. Behind us, the darkness rippled, shifting toward us. We made it to the lobby just as the last light gave out. I felt the cold rush of air behind me as something lunged, but we were already through the door, out into the world beyond. For the first time in years, I was outside, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid. I turned to her, my pulse still racing. "They'll come back," I said, "and I need to know what they are." Because now it wasn't just about surviving. It was about stopping them.
Fear is a prison. It binds, it suffocates, makes the world smaller until you forget there was ever anything beyond the walls you built for yourself. But fear is also a teacher, revealing truths you were never meant to know. Our watcher behind the peephole spent years believing the outside world was his enemy, never realizing the true horror was already inside, creeping along the edges of his reality, waiting for the moment he would break. And when that moment came, when the creatures scratched at his door, he had no choice. Either stay in the darkness or step into the light. But here's something to remember, dear listeners. The monsters outside are never as dangerous as the ones you let in. He survived this time, but the battle isn't over. Not for him, not for you. Because once you've seen the things that lurk in the shadows, you can never unsee them. And so, sooner or later, they'll come scratching at your door too. The real question is, will you be ready to open it? Another tale fades into the darkness, but the horrors reglance, are never truly gone, only waiting, lurking just beyond the edges of sight. I am Thorn Blood Rose, until we meet again. Good nightmares, and sleep tight, if you can.